usually when people are stuck, they ask who? The priest. The Abuna, help us with this. I'm just telling you, when we are stuck as clergy, we ask who? Dr. Yousry. So may God bless you, Uncle. Thank you. I called Uncle almost 10:30 p.m. I'm texting him, are you in Orange County? Because I know he's all over the place. And he told me yes. So I told him, can I call you back? I call you now. He told me yes. And graciously he accepted to cover the cancellation last minute. And my apology for all of this. And we are very, very thankful to have you with us, Uncle.
Thank you. Okay. I assume that you are all parents who have teenagers, correct? Yes. Okay, that's very important. Huh? Or preteens. We'll talk about preteens also. Okay. Thank you, Abuna, for giving me the blessing. Actually, I felt Abuna's prayers because the time was very tight, and I looked into my previous presentations about teenagers and tried to modify one of them so that it may fit us today during that limited time. Parenting through understanding teen life. By the way, if you like to take notes on your phone or anything, or questions, to remember to ask me at the end. I'm sure I'm not going to cover everything, but I'll try to cover most things, most significant aspects, and most significant and critical issues of the age. First, I like to start with a verse which is very important. Fathers or parents in general do not exasperate. You know the word exasperate? Intimidate. ما تغيظوش أولادكم. Don't provoke them. Your children, instead bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. If you ask me what is the real the major issue between parents and teenagers through all the times, I would say that we don't know how to avoid provoking them or intimidating them. In other words, we don't know how to communicate with our teenagers. So, if we have one objective this afternoon, I would rather say it is the objective of learning how to understand them and how to communicate them. So in order to understand them, I may ask each and everyone here in this room to go back with your memory and to remember the times when you were 13, 14, 15. And try just to remember those years. Spend few seconds with your memory and come up with some conclusion. How would you describe your teenage? I'm sure that you'll have some positive memories and some negative memories. I hope the memories were not mostly negative, because it's bad, you know. Anyhow, in Arabic language, that's why they call it teen age, you know, which is mud age, you know. But it's really muddy, you know. This age is really muddy, and we'll know very shortly why it's called like that. Before I start with the teenage, I would rather start with some general concepts. Why do we divide human development into stages? You know, they generally divide human development into stages so that to make it easier on us to understand and to deal and to manage whether I am the child or the adult, or I am the parent or the caregiver in general. So, what are the stages of development in general? Can you remember that? First one, say, we'll make it easy. Early childhood, from 0 or 1 day to 6. Once we hit age 6, it's over. The second is from 6 to, they used to say late childhood or latency, and that's about from 6 to 12. But nowadays, they started to isolate from 6 to 10, away from 10 to 12 and 13, which is, we call it the preteens or the tweens. We'll talk about that very, very soon. And then teenage, also we roughly speaking, from 12, 13 until we hit age 18, which is the start of young adulthood. Young adulthood takes us from age 18 to 25, 27, 28, and then adulthood, and then middle life, say from 45. I was just talking at St. Marina last Friday about midlife crisis. And that's the age 45, say up to 65. Then they started to divide old age also into 3 stages, like young old age from 65 to 70, 75, then middle old age from 75 to 80 or 85, because nowadays there is, much older than before, the span of life. Then the real old age is from 85 and plus, Each stage has different needs, different expectations, and different tasks. And they say that unless I am done with the tasks required from me at my stage of life, I can't be as functional as I should be when I move from one stage to the other. Unless, like, for example, what is the most important task about early childhood? Guess what? Gaming. The early childhood is, the healthy development of early childhood means that I pass through that stage without, I just can summarize it in a couple of words. Avoiding trauma. That's the main emphasis these days with human scientists in general, psychologists, psychiatrists in general. Avoiding exposure to trauma, because they found that trauma happens usually during the first 6 years of age. And so on. Each stage has its tasks. We'll see the task about the teenage very soon. Different performances, and different sets of problems, and different approaches or solutions. These are the characteristics of each developmental stage. Let me start with the preteens. They call it the tweens, and the age, I'd say, from 10 to 12 or 11 to 13, anything between 10 and 13 in general, until they hit 13. When I say 13, means they hit age 13 on their 13th birthday, because that's the beginning of teen age. Okay? The difference because of genetic factors, hormonal factors, gender factors will make it different from one person to the other. What would happen with the tweens? It's called the onset of puberty. Puberty marks the beginning of sexual maturity. Onset in, English language means start or beginning, but actually in real English the word onset means what? Anybody knows? The attack. Sudden attack. Because puberty starts suddenly. All of a sudden. Yeah? Yeah, without any introduction. And this age is about exposures and experimentation. That's why it's a very highly risky stage of development. What's risky about that age? Now the child is no more child, mentally, physically, little bit grown up, more experienced than when he or she was like 6 or 7 or 8 or 9. The spectrum of knowledge for them at that age is very wide. So, what is the risk here? You can tell me.
If they communicate without talking to the parents, they communicate with the friends.
Exactly. When they started to rely on having their experiences from outside of home and family. So we can say risky because of the exposure to negative experiences. Like, for example, one of the most critical experiences that can happen at that age is about addictive behaviors and sexual perversions or misconduct. I mean, at that point, children, and I saw kids like that at age 12 and 13 in middle school, many of them started first time to experiment with pot, with weed, with marijuana, hashish, and they ended up being hooked to that. That's a very risky behavior that would predict the future behavior of the child. The problem here that the brain centers are very sensitive to these or such early experiences. The experience of pleasure at that age would leave deep impact on the brain. That's why protecting my child against addictive behavior or negatively pleasurable behaviors like what? Like drugs, like alcohol, and sex. Sexual behavior at that age, kids become very close to each other, but according to their genders, like boys and boys, girls and girls. They love to hang out with each other. And during that time, something may happen, especially if the little older child is more experienced with some sexual behavior, like homosexuality, for example, or even heterosexuality, and starts to teach the younger child, your child, how to do this and how to do that. And also the pleasure that results from that experience may leave deep impact on the mind of the child. That's how the brain is working, especially when we are young. The younger the age, the more damaging the impact is. So that's why, trauma that happens to early in childhood, like age 1 or 1 day to 6 years, can result into, grave outcomes like homosexuality. A child, a boy or a girl who had been just exposed to some sexual experience at age 3 may end up becoming homosexual, and he or she would never remember that experience. But we end up with having a gay or a lesbian in our community because of that experience. Does this happen? Yes, all the time, unfortunately. Yes.
Is getting addicted to gaming during that?
Yes, I'm coming to that. Yes. So, gaming, what about gaming in that specific age? And we have like an epidemic of video addiction to gaming and Xbox through that specific age. Why does this happen? Usually it happens to children who are either neglected or abused or not submitting themselves to structured life, like having loose family rules. You know, when you spoil your child, this means that my child cannot have boundaries, cannot have control over his or her time, so he or she would become easily hooked to such pleasurable experiences like gaming video games. And of course, the same can apply with pornography, as I'm sure Abuna speaks about that a lot here. Yeah, anything that, ends up with pleasure, that would be very dangerous for this group, age group. That's why this age group, if we say they need structure, actually structuring should have started long time ago. They need firmness, not violence, but firmness. They need something called the home rules. There is time for everything, and we have to stick to our rules. Time for using games, time to sleep, time to study, time to go to church, etc., etc. And children, fortunately, at that stage, especially preteens, are more or less still followers, obedient, They abide easily by rules. Actually, they like rules. Yeah. That's opposite to what's coming soon. When they hit age 14 or 13, they start to rebel. But at this stage of life, they don't mind having rules. Now, let me talk for a second about how to apply rules to this stage of life. You'll be surprised if I ask you to let your child participate in making the rules. Let us sit down, Habibti, and let us set the rules together. What time you want to start playing with Xbox? What time you want to end? What time you want to sleep? What time? Yeah, it doesn't mean that you are going to agree, but when they participate, when they share in making the rules, you are doing something very educational here and very healthy. You know what? And this is actually, we're going to talk a lot about that today. You are making the part in their mind that's not working well up till now, which is called the prefrontal cortex, that part in the brain which is controlling the cognition or the rational thinking. It doesn't work well because it's very immature in such age. But when you help them with making the rules, you're asking them a couple of things. I know, I realize, I validate, I recognize your feeling that you love Xbox. However, we cannot let it go like that loose without boundaries and regulations. So this is the time when we sit down and you ask your mind, what do you think? What makes sense to you? How long would it take you to play with Xbox and games without neglecting other stuff in your life. It's very, very important at this age, and the stage after that, is always to let the child participate. Put some input in setting the rules at home. Okay? And you negotiate that with them peacefully. And once you get their approval, you say, it's okay, done deal, shake hands. We'll start now. And then tomorrow we'll start, Daddy, Mommy, one more minute. No, you set the rules. Yeah, we have to respect the rules here. You know, we'll turn off the lights, we'll turn off the computer or the internet, whatever, you know. And first time they probably will be a little bit upset, but very shortly they will start to accept that as given rules, approved rules, and everybody will be in peace. Huh?
It's going to be a habit.
Yeah, it will be a habit, exactly. Second thing is watching them. You know why? Because many of negative experience happen while the child is away. You trust the child a little bit, of course, because he's your son or she is your daughter, but still something may happen, especially in sleeping overs, for example. Some of those homosexuals report that the first experience happened during a sleepover, you know. What about school or church? I mean, I see many cases that negative behavior, negative actions happen in the church, in the bathroom, away, in the parking lot, things like that. I mean, you know what? There is always a bad apple among any community, you know, because bad apple results from what? Lack of supervision, broken homes, etc., etc. So that bad apple, we worry about that bad apple and the influence of those peers on our children. What is this? What can we do about that? Listen to that. At this age, preteens, if you never had healthy communication between you as a parent and your children, then I'm sorry to say we may be losers, fortunately. It's very important, extremely important, that your child develops the habit of trusting you because you listen to them, you give them time, you welcome their comments and reports when they come from school, from church, and say, Mommy, Daddy, there was a bad boy or a bad girl who asked me to do this or that, do that. It's very important. And this doesn't need you to ask questions. If the child has already developed that habit since the child was 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, then it's easier for you. Of course, if we don't have healthy communication channels between me and my children, anything can happen. I would love to see this kind of communication between parents and children everywhere. Children come back and especially tell their mothers at that stage, Mommy, I had a bad boy who asked me to undress, to get naked, to touch them, to do this, to do that. It's very important. Or to watch things. I mean, I had horrible experiences with that. Like that boy, I remember he was, I think, in a church in Maryland years ago. He was 12, and I was, after giving them a class, a presentation about purity and stuff like that. He asked me to talk to me individually and said, you know, I just came from Egypt a couple years ago. He was 12, when he was 10 when he came, and said, before coming here, that happened in Egypt. Some of my peers just gave me a slip of paper with some letters. And without any doubt, he took those letters and did exactly what they asked him to do. He wrote those letters on the computer, and then he was shocked to find the screen full of porn images and videos. This is not the issue. The issue that young boy, poor boy, has never been able to sleep in peace since he was 8 until he met with me at age 12. Every night he wakes up with, screaming, with nightmares, flashbacks, and so much confusion. The boy was so much depressed, and I diagnosed him immediately with post-traumatic stress disorder. The point here is prevention is much better than treatment. So if that boy could have told his parents, he said, nobody would have understood me. Of course I didn't talk. I was so shy. I was so guilty, etc., etc. You know, so that prevents the child from communicating with parents. And this is something that we need to take care of as soon as possible. Let our children be confident when they come up with something to you. You are not going to punish them. You are not going to tell them you are ulalat al-adab, or you are, and shut them off, and they will never talk to you again. That's how they turn to their peers or to the internet to get all the information. Agree about that? So what we agreed now about how many things? 3 major points. Healthy communication, protection of your child. Okay. What else?
Set the boundary.
The boundaries. Home rules. It's very important for this age. Okay, let me turn to the teens. Age 13, 14, 17 to 18. That's the range, teens.
So before we turn to the teens,
Yeah, before we turn to teens.
so the preteens, sometimes it's hard to communicate with them because they don't have that patience that, like when you start the communication, they wanted precise, just one word and we're done.
We don't have the
You
patience.
told me that before. Why you keep repeating yourself? You know?
Who says that? The parent or the child?
That's right. It's all opposite.
I'm worried that it's the parent or the child. I'm serious. I mean, well, it's ridiculous that many parents don't have enough patience to listen to their children. But for the children to say that, it means that I'm not communicating the right way with them. If I know how to communicate with the child, and this is an art, this is a skill. This is a skill to know how to communicate with your child. Because communicating with your child, it needs always to put yourself in the child's shoes. Age, limitations, level of understanding and mental maturity, span of attention and focus, you know. And then also we need to check with myself as a parent. Do I repeat myself? Do I repeat? For example, advice giving. We all do that. And unfortunately, I tell you, the worst thing that you can ever help your child with is giving advices. This is not the right way to raise your child, by giving advice, especially when it comes to age 10 and above. Why? Because advice giving means that you put the child in a passive way, in a passive situation, a receiver, okay? And you give the child a chance to lose focus on you, or feeling bored. And then the advice itself creates what we call dependability on advice. The child will end up becoming dependent on your advice. And if this is your habit with your children from age 0 until they leave home, then I'm sorry to say your children might be very, very, very vulnerable to failure later on. Because they won't, learn how to depend on themselves. They didn't grow mentally and emotionally to know how to make their decisions. So, how to deal with that age? We'll come to that actually, because what will apply, what applies to the preteens will apply to the teens. So wait, okay? We'll give you the right way how to communicate with them. Yes.
I have a comment of what you said, because if you didn't advise,
Raise your voice, please.
if you didn't advise, so they're going to take advice from outside. Yeah, like if you didn't put what you want them to take in their mind and their brain, like the ideas that maybe it is different here in this, because some of us have been raised here and some of us came recently and some of us have been for a long time. It's a huge difference between people who've been raised here and people who came long time and people who came like 3-4 years ago. But if you are not going to advise your child, who's going to advise him? If you didn't advise him, he's going to get advice from outside, where you said it is from his friends. And the friends has the same experience, like maybe worse, like as you said. A guy that has homosexual or stuff like this, he's going to fill him with his advice on doing this and this and this. So you want us to stay like, okay, nothing, no instruction, no advice, nothing in the world, like you are living as if he is the hero.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is an alternative, a better alternative than advice. Okay, that's the thing that I am going to suggest to you if you hold on. So, but don't forget your question. If I'm not going to cover your question again, please stop me. Okay? Any other questions? Huh? About preteens and tweens.
Yeah, the word of this is my home, my rule.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, actually, we encourage our children to live an independent life since their birth, because this is the natural growing process for any human being. So, for a baby, the stages of independence starts with what? Weaning the child after being lactated, okay? Then starting to walk, then started to leave home, go to school, okay? Then starting to have own a room or own bed away from siblings, then own room. This is very healthy. If we can afford to provide a room for each child, that would be perfect. Because that kind of independence prepares the child in the long run to know how to manage and to cope. And then how to leave home, leave parents. A man shall leave his father and his mother, and so get married. So all of that is you are preparing your child for the following stages of life. Then you respect this independency because you give the child freedom and responsibility. You allow that to happen to your child at that age or little later. Okay? So this is good. When they come to say, this is my room, I said, yes, this is your room. Okay, let me do my room the way I like. Of course you can do. Mama or mommy may come and say, your room is messy. Yeah, but it's my room. Okay? Well, but you know it's messy. Do you like it messy? No, I'm going to do it myself. Okay, I'll let you do it yourself. Okay.
Organize your room.
Yeah. You know, if you ask me, the only intervention here, the only time you need to intervene here, do some intervention, if there is something risky is going on inside the room. For example, the boy or somebody is like smoking pot in the room, for example. Or it's so dirty that you worry about infection and stuff like that. Then this is something serious. But also, if we will wait to answer the advice giving, how can we treat such situations that may evolve in the future? It's about communication. How to communicate. Hold. Okay, yes.
Doctor, me as a parent, I am as a parent coming from Egypt, and not I been born or raised from a long time here. I feel that there is a gap between what we've been used to and what we have to, and the gap is that it's not about anything more than we and our kids. Our kids, they mentally prepare to be Americans. We are mentally not prepared to be Americans. And the gap will come, like, for example, a little bit thing like Amy, what she's saying about when we keep repeating the words. We are purely Egyptian, and this is how we articulate our wordings. The kids, they don't have the tolerance enough to listen to that because they are very American, and they have to be precise and concise in whatever they're hearing. And this is the issue. So what I'm asking you, doctor, please, at any point in the presentation, how we can, as much as we can, because definitely all what we can do is as much as we can, how we can reach to the point to minimize this gap.
Sure. We'll come to that. Okay. Any other questions?
Also, the drugs right now is legal in the school and everywhere.
The what?
The drugs.
Drugs.
And vaping and stuff. And
Not
everything.
not
Not for teens.
No, not for teens, not for
But in
teens.
the schools they have it and they sell it. I mean,
Okay.
how you address it?
We'll come to that.
Okay.
Okay, sure. Teenage is about transition. From where? From childhood to where? To adulthood. All transitional stages of development are very tough and critical. What is the first transitional stage in life? Early childhood. Okay? It's a fast growing stage. And then the second critical or most critical is teenage. And the third one is what? Guess what? Old age, real old age. Yeah. When the old person is preparing for the end. So these are the most critical times in any human being's life. And the transition here creates challenges. So we are going to address those challenges very briefly, as much as the time allows me. But if we need to elaborate, let me know. Quick changes. Quick changes cause confusion. Absolutely. You know why? Because it includes everything. Physical, sexual, mental. Sexual means that for the first time the person starts, the teenager, starts to feel his or her own sexuality, gender, and sexual impulses. And those impulses or that specific factor, sexuality, is very strong. We can say it, one of the most, or one of the strongest elements in human life. I mean, human life is about a couple of things: existence, and sexuality, call it love, call it procreation, whatever is related. Then the physical, very fast, with all the physical change that happen to boys and girls during that age. And we know them. And then with that physical and sexual, there are tremendous hormonal changes. I mean, with the girl, for the girls to start to feel different with being a female, being a girl, young lady, with the monthly period and menstrual cycle, with the boy with his, feeling the strong feelings towards girls, all those sexual impulses, very strong. And the same with the mental. During the preteens, the child cannot comprehend very well what we call the abstract thinking. Abstract thinking means what? Means thinking something like imaginary. So, for example, mathematics, algebra, all that stuff needs a lot of abstracts. That's why young children cannot do that easily. But once they hit the teenage, they start to excel in that. Also, the intelligence during that period, pre-teens and early teens, may stumble a little bit. That's why, please, don't punish your child when they go to grade 7, for example, 6 or 7. Sometimes the grades don't stay A+ or A's and B's all the time. Why? Because intelligence here may suffer some stumbling a little bit. Okay? So please keep that in mind. But after that, intelligence will grow very easily. Let me talk a little bit about the emotional aspect, because this is very important. I said that children at that age, teenage, they are very much confused. Confused with what? Guess what? Am I a child or an adult? This is the question that they have to deal with all the time. When the child at age 13 and 14 is tall enough, especially if she's a girl and, young lady, and she likes to play with young kids and say, "Hey, Maliki, shame on you. You are big now." Oh my God. And if she wants, for example, to do something like adults, say, no, you are still young. So we confuse them all the time with that. And this adds to their questions about themselves, conflicts with self, about self-image, self-esteem. And they are very sensitive to guilt. And you know what is the worst thing for a teenager? Shame. Shame is the one of the very, very strong emotions that they suffer from. That's why the unforgivable sin, remember that, parents, please, from experience, the unforgivable sin for a for a parent of a teenage happens when you criticize your child in front of others. This hurt them so much. It traumatized them. And they won't forget that easily. So please be sensitive to their feelings at that time. They suffer from guilt because they started to deal with those sexual impulses, thoughts, sexual habits, masturbation, and one of the feelings that follow their masturbation is severe guilt, natural guilt, like voice of God may be telling them, you're not going to do that all your life. You have to get rid of that and move on to another level of sexuality, which is marriage. So they feel guilty, and they go to Abuna and confess about that. And we don't have to add to their guilt. Actually, we cannot admonish a teenager for their stumbling at that point, because this can leave them with scars that end up with horrible outcomes. Like what? Like the teenage would end up at age 18 and 20 by becoming atheist. One major reason for atheism is about the guilt, the failure to cope with guilt when that person was a young teenager. And sometimes this happens from mentors and fathers of confessions, when the teenager would go and confess about something like masturbation or sexual sin, and Abuna would tell you're not going to have communion because you are a sinner. We had cases like that who they led them into despair and hopelessness, and they ended up becoming so addicted to many things. So please, we need to be careful not to raise the guilt level within them or the shame level within them more than they have, especially at age 13, 14, 15. Once they hit 16, it's a little bit better. But this is the most critical time, from 13 to 16. Guilt and shame. Self-image is very important, because one of the tasks of teenage to end up with healthy self-image, healthy self-esteem, self-confidence, having trust in themselves, especially as children of God. It's very important. Then the second challenge is the mental aspect. I just talked about intelligent, abstract thinking. Third challenge, the socio-behavioral aspects. Teenagers love their friends, period. And gradually they become more loyal to their friends than to us parents. And this, of course, hurts us a lot. I hear that all the time. Tell my son to spend time with me. Tell my daughter to go on vacation with us, etc., etc. But please, beware of these changes. In fact, God is preparing our teenage children at this stage to eventually leave home. All what's happening during that age is God preparing them for independence. So please help them with that. When you expect that your children are going to stay forever, you're kidding yourself. There is some time when you suffer from the empty nest syndrome. Okay? So prepare yourself from now. They love their peers. They love their friends. They spend time at church, longer time at church, in clubs, in school, everywhere, because of the activities they enjoy with their peers and friends, whether sports, whatever.
They spend with the parent.
Huh?
What is the portion of the time they spend with the parent? Let us say.
Well, it depends. It depends on how parents are welcoming, lovely, understanding, communicating, pleasant.
But if we have the bad apple here with those peers, how can we deal with that in this situation?
Well, I mean, there is always some sort of risk. Always, there are risks in life. There is nothing called life without risks. But this is also about learning experiences. If I trust my child, if I trust my teenage, because I invested so much love and care and attention and structure in my life, in my child's life early, I have to trust them. I have to have confidence in them. And by the way, most of our children are good, even if they don't show that. Even if they stumble sometimes, with that age, they end up coming back to Jesus, which is much more important than coming back to us. But at least we do our job, and we avoid our mistakes. Agree with me? Okay. So, friends and peer pressure is about independence, Of course, I mean, how can we monitor the negative apple, as you say? I will come back to that, to the same question about advice giving and communication. Another aspect of socio-behavioral features of that age is called rebellion, conflict with authority. Yeah, why? You remember when your child was 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 maybe, and you go with your child to cross the street, what did you used to do? You hold? Yes. Yeah. Now if you try to do with that with your 13 and 14, say, yeah, if you dare. You can't dare that today. Yeah. I'm big. But, well, if it comes to that, that's fine. But what about conflicts and rebellion? Yes, some of our children manifest some sort of rebellious behaviors, which sometimes takes them to the extreme. We call it opposition defiance disorder, ODD. This is serious.
I'm sorry,
Huh?
what's the disorder?
Opposition defiance disorder. Opposition. You say right, they say left. Up, they say down. Etc. etc. Yes.
It's very. There are two diagnoses. I will tell you about one.
Okay.
It is ODD. You never mention ODD in front of a teacher. You never mention it to the kid. Once it is diagnosed and in the system, it stays for life.
Yes.
So uncle is saying ODD, but
this is the extreme.
Any rebelling kid, you tell them you are an ODD. No. Because
this is a diagnosis.
Yeah,
we
it's
cannot.
deal.
Yeah.
It is very serious.
Yes.
ODD is a very serious diagnosis. So.
The two. I mean, there are more than one personality disorder that we have to avoid diagnosing unless it's needed. Like the ODD, the antisocial personality disorder. That's another major problem with teenage. And the borderline personality disorder. And these are, we don't want to get into that now because of the time, but at least I'm talking now about the aspect of rebellion. When they say, it's not going to bother you when your child sometimes say, no, I disagree with you. No, I don't want to do this. No, it should be done the other way. It's very common. What's going on with that process? this sport called defiance or opposition, not the disorder, but opposition and defiance. What's about that? It's part of their independence and growing their personality. They are trying to manage with their own growing mind and abilities to make decisions. So I call it a training time of training. And if you know how to communicate right with your child, you will never suffer from that at all at home. So I'm trying just to keep you eager to know what's about communication. Okay, hold. Okay, another challenge.
Is there any later stage?
Wait until the end. Academic and work issues.
Doctor, I have a
Yes, absolutely. تفضلي.
You want to say that this is the borderline for communicating with every child? Like, I have two kids. I have two boys and a girl. I have they are not that different in age. I have one, he's 19, and the other is going to be 17.
Yes.
But there is a huge difference between the way of communication between them. My youngest, I told him, God created two eyes, and a nose, and a mouth. Period. These are not here. These are not here. These two are not here. On the other side, my oldest, we can communicate for hours. Like, he called me on the phone, he's in Riverside. Even when he's home, we communicate with each other in everything. Everything you can imagine and don't imagine.
And was it like this when he was?
He was, he began to communicate with me when he was in 10th grade. But my oldest, he's a junior, and honestly, he has no these. These are not.
Was it like this? Was it like this with the older when he was? When he was 16?
We began to communicate so closer when he began to come to 10th grade. 10th grade.
You know what I'm talking about?
10th grade. When he was before 10th grade, like when he was a freshman and junior high, this was not it was not like that. But since he hit the...
It's a phase. My point, it's a phase. The kids are going through it. Sometimes they go through it earlier, sometimes they go through it later on.
Absolutely. Yes, Abuna, of course, yeah. It has no rules. It can happen anytime. It's a very complicated process, So, yeah. Ali?
He's taking the same house, I'm telling him in the twins.
Yeah. Well, don't confuse yourself in general with those differences, but it's much better to invest in learning or teaching myself how to reach them, how to motivate them, how to communicate with them. This is the real art, this is the real skill that today we all need to get out with that skill. It's very important. Hold.
Nothing late, right?
Huh?
If it is there is no later stage, like.
No.
There is hope.
There is hope.
Any grandkids this time?
Yeah. Just be patient. What about your teenage child, school, career, and work? Some of your children would love to start to work when they are 14, 15, 16. They start to save money. They start to have ambitions and go to college or study. That's great. These are good things because you teach them responsibility. For example, when your teenage reaches the stage, age of 15 or 16 and start to learn driving, taking driving lessons, or he wants to drive a car, or she wants to have, what would be your way to deal with that? How would you teach them responsibility plus freedom? Because age 16, driving a car means a turning point in the teenager's life, means responsibility, freedom and responsibility. If they perceive that like a way to do whatever they want to do, just unrestricted freedom, then they are at risk. But if you teach them, you have to pay for this. You have to, take care of that part, especially for boys, because they are more aggressive by gender, so we need to set the rules very well for them. Of course, they are busy studying and going to college, especially when they reach, grade 10 and 11 and 12. But let me tell you about dealing with these sexual impulses. How do they say? From age 10, 11 to 13, there's some natural closeness between the same gender individuals. Boys with boys, they stuck together. Girls with girls, and they hate each other. But once they get into the real age, 14, 15, there is some shift here. And it's very strong. For girls, they always talk about something called a crush. This is the language they deal with. And for boys, they always talk about something called fun. And these are the main, their language, something cool, something fun, some crush. And they have part of our communication with them, like a mother with a girl. Helping her that a crush may be always followed by a crash. And that's how you raise the sense of reality in their strong sexual impulses. For boys, of course, you need to discuss all those issues individually with them. And this is discussed by a father. That's why when it comes to sexuality and the emotional issues, boys should be taken care of by their fathers. Girls should be taken care of by their mothers. Why? Why don't we cross here? When they were young, first 12 years of age, boys needed to bond very strongly with their moms, and girls needed to bondly with their fathers. Otherwise, they won't be successful husbands and wives later on. Because if the first marriage between a child and the other gender parent fails, then it's very likely that this kid, once they grow, their future marriage may fail the same way. And we see that all the time. So it's very important, first 12 years. But once a child hits puberty or teenage, go back to the same gender parent. A boy with a father, dad, and a girl with a mother. You are free to discuss anything. You are free to communicate. You are free to ask questions, or she would ask questions to you. And feel free to keep all that stuff confidential. You assure your child that everything we discuss is confidential. No, this is part of the building up the trust issue between child and parent. How do we do that? This will come to the communication thing. Let me tell you something about sex and gender identity. One of the major tasks of teenage is to end up with identifying their gender. I am a boy, I am a man. I am a girl, I am a woman. I am a woman. This gender confusion is what we might end up with homosexuality or bisexuality or whatever. So in order to promote that, encourage our children, that's why we say once they hit age puberty, let your child stick to the same gender parent. I am a boy, I need to be a man. I will see that in my father, my dad, my abuna, my mentor, etc. I follow their steps. I am a girl, I have my mom, and she will help me how to understand myself and end up becoming a woman, etc., etc. These are very important basics with teenagers. spiritual aspect, time for repentance. This is the time they start to deal with guilt. You know, when I start to feel guilty about my sin, what does this mean to me? It means that I feel my need for a Savior, for someone to forgive me, to redeem me from my guilt and shame. Who is that? Jesus Christ. And this is the time to introduce our teenagers to know God. God the Savior. God the Forgiver. God who loves them unconditionally, forgive them unconditionally, accept them unconditionally. They find that at home first with parents, and they find it as well at church. If they go to church and they don't meet with Christ, etc., etc. Very important. Remember, this is the time when we saw great saints and martyrs in the history of church presented. What about home environment? Do you understand me? I think this is the most commonly phrase or question to be said at home. Daddy, Mommy, you don't understand me. Who is right? Who is right here? My child or I am the parent? It's always the child. Sorry. The child is always right. You know, the client is always right. The client here is the child. Yeah, the boss is always right. So please, why? Why don't we understand them? I tell you now something about how their behavior happens or takes place. Let me explain first some idea about the brain, the human brain. The human brain, to be functional, it has three major parts. Basic part that we are all born with is called the emotions. And the center of emotion is called the amygdala in the brain, the base of the brain. We are all born with emotions, born with feelings, since the moment we are born. Of course, you know, the first thing, a baby after birth, what does the baby do? Cry. Why do they cry? Actually, they scream. Why? What is this scream about? What's the feeling here? Fear, worry, panic. And this is the major fear, the major feeling that we live with all our life. You know, this is the dominant feeling in our life. Fear, worry. Simply because we worry about the future or we worry about dying. So this is the basic existential instinct in me and in all of us. So this is about feeling. This part is going to work for the rest of our life. The second part has very little existence in the brain, and is called the prefrontal cortex, or the center of cognition, which means rational thinking, مركز التفكير والحكمة, the center of wisdom. And that part starts very thin in a baby's brain, slowly growing day after day. What is the age of maturity of cognition, of the rational thinking? Guess what? 24, 25, 26, something like that. Okay. And then a third part is called the memory. The memory. The memory has two levels. I'm trying just to simplify things. A level called the subconscious, العقل الباطن, which is a storage area in the mind that keeps the experiences inside. Some of those experiences may go to the second chamber, which is called the conscious, which is the memory that's present in my mind right now. I can remember, last year I went to Egypt. I have memories about Egypt at that time. You say last year you went to the Holy Land, for example, etc., etc. This is recent memory. But the distant memory or the very old memory may disappear after some time, especially the memory of the first few years of age, first 3 to 4 years of age. However, those things that were stored in the memory very early in age may carry some painful experiences. I call them trauma or wounds, إصابات. Happened to me when I was like 2, 3, 4. Trauma like what? Like I was very young, but I used to hear my dad and mom fighting all the time. I used to hear my mom screaming, or, somebody died and something happened. Or somebody hit me, punished me severely. Somebody touched me sexually in a very weird way, unexpected way that played with my mind. Because all of these experiences, play with the person's personality and future behavior. Now I am a teenager. Okay, I am your child now. And you see me angry all the time. And you don't know why. Why I'm saying no to you all the time? So oppositional and defiant. You know why? Because when I was a child, I didn't have the chance to express my anger because I was so dependent on my parents. Now I'm 14. I feel the vigor and I feel the strength and the power and the confidence in my growing personality. So I have got the guts to come to you, mommy or daddy, and say no. And then conflicts start to erupt and we start to argue or fight or whatever. What do I need to do to understand you, my child? I have to assume that there is some painful feelings affecting you or influencing your behavior or leading you to become in this mood. I'm just walking with you one step at a time. What should I do? I have two choices. عيب يا ولد ما تزعقش. انت بقيت قليل الادب وانت يا بنت اتعلمت تعلي صوتك على امك. Do you understand my Arabic? Okay. That's one way. And then my child would say, okay, you don't understand. And they leave. And when they leave, they say, it's much better to spend more time with my peers and stay away from home. Or just take it to the computer and do the pornography or do the games or the whatever. Or the chat or the text or whatever. And now we have the social media is so perfectly fit for that. And I find ways to escape the painful interactions with my parents. Second choice, listen to second choice. Habibi, you raised your voice. You sound like you are very angry at me. I'm sorry. Habibi, you look like you are very upset. Period. Not at me or not anybody. That's another alternative. Habibti, something is bothering you. That's why you said that. Habibti, it's not your way to say those bad words. I know you are a good girl. And you are a wonderful boy. I'm sure something is bothering you, Habibi. What did you notice here? I didn't ask questions. I didn't ask, why are you angry? What is making you upset? Why are you worried? Etc., etc. All what I said is in the form of a statement, a fact. You look like this. You sound like that. Period. And when I say it in a compassionate way, loving way, gentle way, soft way, طبعا هتقولوا لي بس هو مفور دمي أو هي مفورت. Well, believe me, my dear parents, the problem is always about us, not about them. We don't know how to communicate with them. Or we communicate with them the wrong way. Or we put our ego before them. And we give excuses for our ego. العيل ده لازم يتربى. ده قل أدبه. دي قلت إزاي علت صوتها. لو سكت لها المرة دي هتطلع فيها. Sorry. I'm sorry to say to you that after 60 years in serving in Sunday schools last month, I tell you, I ended up with all these conclusions from experience that it doesn't work unless we know how to address and touch with their feelings. You know what will happen if I were the child and my mommy or my daddy would come say, Habibi, you sound like you're very upset. You are very angry. I know you don't want to talk about it now. It's okay. I understand that. I'm not mad at you because I know. Probably you had some bad day at school today. Or just stop at that point. Habibti, you are very worried. I see that. I'm sorry for that. Habibi, you are good. I'm sure that there is something unusual is happening to you. Can you imagine when your child hears that? You are actually moving their emotions because you are doing something great which is called validation of emotions. You are acknowledging their emotions. And that's how they respond in a very positive way. Mommy, I am very sorry. Mommy, or Daddy, you're right. I had a bad day at school. I was really worried because I have tons of work waiting for me. Or I was been bullied at school, and this happens a lot these days. Bullying. I didn't talk about it yet. Bullying at school. Something that's not related to you as parents at all. It's all about understanding them acknowledging their feelings, validating their feelings, and that's how they would calm down. And that's how I begin a healthy communication with my child. Unless we open the key of emotions first, this prefrontal cortex, cognition, rational thinking, wisdom, decision making is not going to work as well. Unless we hit on the emotions, we will not help our child reach a rational, wise conclusion. And this is exactly what we do in counseling. I'm giving you the secret. Abuna knows that. How to solve problems. The first question is about feelings. The first discussion is about feeling. How do you feel, Habibi, today? When my child is coming from home, from school, ورمى الشنطة كده ورزع الباب, and you ask them, Habibi, you had a bad day at school, I'm sure. الأم اللي هي تشوف عيالها يقطعني يا حبيبي ده شكلك راجع تعبان وزعلان ومتضايق كلام حلو. يقطعني دي جميلة. بتخلي العيال ايه؟ feel compassion. There is compassion, which is, it's actually the two aspects of love in communicating love are about compassion and empathy. Empathy is about, feeling the other. Compassion is the desire to help that person, which is great. This is about healthy Christian communication. So now we understand. How do you understand me? Okay? Peer pressure, of course. The new high tech, okay, social media. Our children are now bombarded with horrible pressures from everywhere. And this is not fun for them. You know why? Because after they spend hours on the computer, whether it's games or pornography or social media or whatever, they don't feel okay. They don't feel good. They feel like they missed a lot and messed with a lot. And this is not fun. So help them to understand themselves by understanding their feelings. So when they don't think, when they don't use good judgment, they end up with what? Risky behaviors called impulses, impulsiveness. Rushy. Do reckless, irresponsible acts. And that can be dangerous because they end up with having something that would leave a memory of pleasure in their mind, which is called addiction. That's all about addiction. Addictive behaviors are about memory of pleasure that lasts in their mind, and then under stress, they go back to those pleasurable memories and pleasurable acts and repeat them, whether it's drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever. So you encourage your child by overcoming their impulses. How? How? This is the process. Feeling, thinking, acting. First step, you spoke with your child about their feelings. You look like angry, upset, worried, scared, whatever. But the second question, and this is the answer for you, mommy. The second question is, so what do you think you want to do, or what do you think you should do, or we should do? The first question or the first argument or the first interaction in communication is about the amygdala, about the feeling, emotions. But you take, after you address the emotions, and your child would calm down, would be eligible and ready to interact with that part which is called the cognition. They are ready to think. So your question is, what do you think, Habibi? What do you think we need to do about that? Now back to the early question about advice giving. When I give an easy advice to my child, the child here is passive. And you, the advice giver, is active. You are giving me the advice. So I am not engaging mentally in coming up with solutions, outcomes, to learn how to deal with similar situations in the future, especially after عمر طويل لينا. When we raise our children to be advice dependent, and then we disappear from their lives, بيلوصوا. They get lost. Why? Because there is no daddy, no mommy, no abuna, no anybody. And I've never been taught how to make my own decisions, but this is the way. What do you think we need to do before we make a decision, an action? You understand the process here? How do you feel? What do you think? And then in this thinking process, احنا قلنا ان كبر ابنك خوي مش كده؟ يعني your teenage boy is your young brother, your teenage girl is sister. Now brother to brother, but big brother, that's daddy. What do you think? And your son may ask you, Daddy, you tell me. No, Habibi, you have to think. What do you think? What would be the best thing? تعالوا ندي example. Give one example. My 14, 15-year-old, I am her friend, I am her mother, and she came and told me, I have a boyfriend. I want to have a boyfriend. Or a boy, I want to have a girlfriend. Okay. There are alternatives here. You can say, no, way. احنا صعيدة. No, we are Egyptians, you know. We can't accept that in our community or church or whatever. خلاص. My child قفل معايا. I lost him. Will never come back and tell me anything about their life. But listen to the other scenario. Habibti, you love someone. It looks like you like someone. Probably he is so cute. This guy is so cute. Oh, mommy, how did you know? I know that. I know when you like nice boy. And of course, I mean, all girls are. I mean, just fighting about him or something. Mommy, how did you know? But this is about friendship. This is the first thing. This is the feeling thing. Let us move to the thinking. After this dialogue and interaction, you know. So what do you think you want to do, Habibi? Is he ready to get married to you? Oh, mommy, I'm still young. So what? I mean, but you love each other, you like each other, and you know, me and daddy, we loved each other, and that's why we got married, you know. Yeah, but mommy, I'm still in high school, so what do you want to do? You know. And slowly but surely, you lead your child into this thinking step until they come up with conclusions themselves. It's not going to work. and it's very highly risky, and it's too much loss and negative investment, etc., etc. So what should I do? Okay, let us think of other alternatives. And when we are ready with other alternatives, this can apply to any argument with our children. How do you feel? Does this make sense to you?
Yes, I have an experience on this.
Yeah,
one.
on that?
This is why I want. My oldest son came like 5 years ago. He was like 13, 14. Mom, I want to get married. You know what? This is right. How did I do this? And yeah, this is so good. You know, he has a master bedroom. So I told him, furniture is okay. It's well furniture. The room's well furniture. You have your own bathroom. You have everything. You will need just one more lunch pail. So when you want to get married, just tell me. It's okay. It's so easy. One more lunch pail for her, and we'll be okay.
So
We've been laughing on this for years. Like, yeah, it's only just one more lunch pail to go to school with her.
it works. Okay, let me go to finally now summary before we conclude and answer questions. 7 major issues for teenage: identity, self-image, and self-esteem. When we say identity, it's not only the gender identity. You asked me first about being Egyptian or American or so. I would say, please, if you rely on our identity as Egyptians or Americans, you are going to lose the argument, 100%. You know why? Because you may tell them, we are Egyptians, we are Saida, this is our culture, and say, why did you come to America? Yeah, why did you move here? Why did you they have, makes sense here. If you say we are American, then you may be in trouble, okay? Or end up with being in trouble, okay?
We know better than you.
Exactly. So let us agree about our identity. What is our identity, my dear brothers and sisters? I think our identity is Christian, not Coptic, not Orthodox. We are Christian. Yes, the church that gave birth to us in faith is the Coptic Orthodox Church. This is our mother church. But the identity is belonging to Jesus Christ. You know why? Because in Jesus Christ we have a reference, we have a manual that we all can go back to when we differ with something. They say right and we say left, or say left and we say right. How can we solve that argument? Let us see what the Bible says, what the church says in that matter. Let us, if we don't know, let's go and ask Abuna, because he knows better, etc., etc. So there is a reference, Christian reference, the major reference. Yes.
But I bet sometimes the answers, like you make everything religious when we come to any discussion, and I try to communicate with them and we refer that we are Christian. Almost not every time we refer to everything and make it religious.
Not necessarily religious, but and this is not about religion. This is about the law of life, the law that regulates us. For example, when it comes to serious arguments, like, for example, having a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or say going to the prom and sleeping over, etc., etc. I mean, when you say we are Egyptians, they say, but everybody here is doing that. American. There is something that we need to emphasize. Actually, Abuna Dawood Lamai spoke about when he came here 2 months ago. Like, we are leaders, not followers. Okay? We raise our children to become leaders. That's very important. The second thing is what we do should follow our Christian belief. you will have the choice later on to select to stay with Jesus Christ or to go anywhere. Yeah, we live in a free country. They don't force you to stay in one religion the rest of your life. But as long as we are your parents, I'm talking about underage teenagers, because once they hit age 18, they may change their minds, which is okay. They will be responsible for that. But at least during the time when you are raising your teenagers, let us refer to the Bible or this spiritual thing when we need to. It's nothing religious here. Religious means that we follow rites and rituals. No, we are following spiritual meanings of life. Okay?
Once you tell them, like, let's see what the Bible says, they always say that.
Yeah.
What's that?
Religious. When you tell them, like, let's talk about the Bible, what say,
Yes.
let's see what the Bible say about this
Yeah.
point, they always say why you are so religious.
Okay, that's fine. But that's what our rules are. Let me just. I want to differentiate between two things here: the meaning of religion and the meaning of spirituality. These are two different things, because in religion, we should experience spirituality, because religion without spirituality, and you correct me, religion without spirituality is meaningless. It's about rituals and rites. Like احنا بنروح الكنيسة ونصلي ونتناول وبتاع, بس we don't love God. We don't obey God. We don't keep God's commandments in our life. Okay? Then we are practicing religion, but we are not practicing the commandments of God. Include religion is about expressing our love to God through rites and rituals, like going to church, having communion, fasting, things like that. These are religious practices to express our love to God, but our love to God is something that includes everything, and it's about the commandment. Okay? So this is what I mean here, the commandment. Purity is a commandment. Purity is not religion. Purity is about loving God, and I keep myself pure for God. Okay? It's not religion. You need to explain that to your children.
Pope Shenouda also mentioned very nice, simple idea that it works with all the kids. Why there are two river banks? في ليه ضفتين للنيل for any river? Why there is two banks that is guiding the water? What is the point of those two banks? And if there is no bank for the river, what will happen?
Anywhere, so it's going to be
No
full
river.
channel.
No. What will happen for the water?
Flood.
It will be going everywhere. Will the water exist?
No.
No existence.
No
So the
river.
river banks is the commandment of God. God is not controlling us. The water is free. Is moving in any direction. But the river banks is guiding and protecting the existence and the freedom of the water, which is a key point.
Good.
So it is not about control, because the water is free to go wherever it wants to go. We are not controlling the water. But the commandment of God is the river banks. When the commandment is gone, then this is a big mess.
Yeah.
And the existence is no longer there.
Very
The
good.
boundary?
Yeah.
This is Pope Shenouda.
Yes.
I'm quoting him.
No, it's very good analogy. Yes.
I just need to add a little bit thing about that, because on a personal level, I'm just into the studies looking at it very deeply. They're almost, and I will say almost because I don't have the evidence, let's say 100%, but I'm very sure it will reach to the 100%. The exact compatibility between God's words and the science.
And what?
And the science. And I'm speaking about psychology specifically because this is my main concern. And I got into some challenges about when I speak about scientific requirements for maturity. okay? And someone challenged me on the Facebook side and told me, "Do you have any reference from the Bible?" And I got for him references from the Bible on every single point about this. So there is a great compatibility. And that's what I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I'm seeing it. We don't need that much to differentiate between what we have as spirituality and the world. We don't need to have two things. It's one thing. We are living with the one thing. And when it comes to the challenges, even the science telling that. Even the science telling about purity, about abstaining from sexuality, about drugs, about every single thing has a reference inside the Bible. It was very clear, and to the amazing, like, wow, how it happens to me.
Yes. Would you believe, assure you and your comment that the best and the most effective treatment, the long-term treatment of addiction is what? Based on what? Spirituality.
Yeah.
Spirituality. The higher power, the presence of a higher power. Because addiction is about loss of control over a habit. And I need a higher power to enable me.
That's exactly the 12 steps.
Yeah.
That's my job. That's
12
why I'm saying
exactly.
I see that every day.
Yes.
And that's what I'm presenting to my kids.
Yes.
If we speak about, okay, you want to challenge me about God and science, and you speak about very rational and scientifically, let me give you what science telling you, how it works in science.
Absolutely.
Is it compatible? So trust in God that from 2,000 and 7,000 years ago, what we have in our hands is now what we are delivering to the people through psychology and treatment, and it's really true.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's go quickly through the 7 major issues. Number 2, negative environments, bullying and peer pressure. Number 3, experimentation and addictive behaviors. Number 4, conflict with home, authority and rules. Number 5, sexual perversions and homosexuality. Number 6, teen depression and suicide. And the last one, how to communicate with them. Major issues with our teenage children. And I have others, the next, and some of you are still writing. Take a picture. Okay. The last one is ideas for parental solutions. I have also 7 ideas. Number 1, healthy home environment. Please. Whatever you may do with your teenage child, and let them live at home where there is no peace, no love, and no joy, they will suffer. So basic needs for teenagers about healthy home environment. It's very important. Like any child. Because children get easily depressed when home is not healthy. They blame themselves sometimes for whatever is going on at home. They consider that dad and mom are fighting, are not in love with each other because they are bad boys or bad girls. Number 2, balanced home rules. We spoke first about home rules and regulations. Number 3, healthy spirituality. Teenagers, please, they hate being pushed into religion, but they love living with healthy spirituality. When you push them into religious acts, once they hit teenage, they may react in a very angry way or very rebellious, and they may end up leaving church. Once they hit age 18, they don't stay anymore, because we don't give them the real image the good image, the loving and accepting image of God. You know, please be careful and be wise when you push your child to wake up very early in the morning to go to church and be a deacon and fast or do something like that. It's always good to let them love doing that. And this would be much helped if you provide them with a home and family full of love and peace. Because they feel love and peace at home, and they go to church and they enjoy that again at church. Number 4, unconditional forgiveness. You don't hold them hostages of something bad or negative that happened from them before. مش هتقعد كل شوية تفكرهم. Don't remind them of past experiences. Please, they hate that. This is very discouraging to them. Unconditional forgiveness and love and acceptance like God. Apology for past mistakes. If you made mistakes with them during childhood, please offer them deep and sincere apology. حبيبي سامحني أنا كنت بضربك وأنت صغير. I hate you زمان. I'm asking you to forgive me. I apologize. I have no excuse. ما تقولهمش أنا ضربتكم عشان انتوا كنتوا مطلعين عيني. يبقى باظت الدنيا. You have to give unconditional apology. Whatever mistakes you did with them, as soon as you can, because this relieves them from a burden of guilt. They always blame themselves that they were bad boys and bad girls. لكن ما تقول لهم it was my mistake. أنا اللي كنت بضربكم. أنا اللي زعلتكم. Apology. This will be great for them. And number 6 is healthy church environment and service. All teenagers badly need healthy church environment and service. It's very important. And guess what about the last one? Communicating love, feelings, and emotions with them. Now you can take a picture, and we are almost coming to an end. I'm sorry, it's took us 2 hours, not 1.5, sorry. But actually, thank you so much for your listening. Here is my email if you need any advice or anything from me. I said I'm against advices, but still I can listen to your questions, of course. And please keep me in your prayers. Thank you. Glory be to God now and forever. Amen.